There the spiritual atmosphere of the royal palace was thick with an ancient, overwhelming pressure, as Ichigo Kurosaki began his arduous journey to master his true power. Under the watchful and enigmatic gaze of Ichibe'e Hyosube, the leader of Squad Zero, Ichigo was pushed into a special realm that only the Soul King himself could grant access to, a place designed to test the very core of his identity and strength. While Ichigo struggled to grasp the depths of his own soul far below in the frozen city of Silburn, Yhwach stirred a different kind of chaos. By announcing the young Quincy Uryu Ishida as his official successor, Yhwach fractured the unity of the Sternritter. Outrage rippled through the ranks, most notably from Baz B, who viewed the loyal Jugram Hashwalth as the only rightful heir. Yet, despite the internal friction, Uryu underwent a sacred ritual that solidified his allegiance and awakened a dormant power within him, a power that would soon be turned against his former friends. As these preparations were underway, the Soul Society was lulled into a false sense of security that was shattered when a massive, ominous shadow dome descended over the Seirite. This was not a simple invasion from the outside. The Wandenreich had been hiding within the shadows of the Soul Society for 1,000 years, secretly absorbing Reishi and waiting for the moment to reclaim the world within 9 days, as dictated by the grim prophecy of the Kaiser Gesang. The second wave of destruction was brutal and calculated. Captain Commander Shunsui Kyoraku and his Lieutenant Nanao Aisei stood their ground against Hashwalth, with Nanao utilizing complex Kido barriers to temporarily nullify the Quincy's overwhelming influence. Elsewhere, the streets ran with blood as Sternritters were ordered to hunt down the captains who had lost their Bankai, seeking to extinguish the last flickers of Soul Reaper morale. The battlefield was a tapestry of desperation. Captain Toshiro Hitsugaya and Rangiku Matsumoto found themselves engulfed in the searing flames of Baz B, their coordinated defenses failing against the raw intensity of the Sternritter's heat. Just as the icy captain was on the verge of death, Sternritter Kang Du stepped in, wielding Hitsugaya's own stolen Bankai to deliver a mocking final blow. In another sector, Captain Soifon was pushed to her physical limits by the mechanical precision of BG-9, whose relentless explosions and harvesting techniques left her severely wounded and gasping for air. However, the tide of despair began to turn when a secret transmission from Kisuke Urahara reached the battlefield. Having discovered that the Quincy possessed a fundamental biological weakness to hollow Reishi, Urahara introduced the Shineyaku, special black pills designed to temporarily hollowify a Soul Reaper's Bankai. This transformation made the Bankai poisonous to the Quincy's, forcing the stolen powers back to their original owners. Hitsugaya, touching the pill just as death loomed, reclaimed his frozen wings and shattered his opponent with renewed vigor. Soifon experienced a similar reversal, reclaiming her Bankai to obliterate the mechanical BG-9 in a spectacular display of power. Amidst this resurgence, Captain Shinji Hirako unleashed his own Bankai, Sakashima Yokoshima Hapofusagari, a terrifying ability that inverted the perception of friend and foe, forcing the Quincy soldiers to massacre one another in a state of absolute confusion. As the Sternritters activated their ultimate forms, the Vollständig, the violence escalated to new heights. Bambietta Basterbine, enraged by the shifting momentum, unleashed a torrent of explosions that incapacitated Shinji. Her rampage was halted by the arrival of Captain Sajin Komamura, who revealed a shocking and tragic secret. To avenge the fallen Captain Commander Yamamoto and ultimately reach Yhwach, Komamura had offered his own heart to his clan's elder, undergoing a forbidden humanization technique that rendered him a temporarily immortal warrior. Summoning his Bankai, Kokujo Tengen, Myo-O, Dangai-Jo, a giant samurai stripped of its armor and its vulnerabilities, Komamura crushed Bambietta with a decisive and crushing blow. But victory came at a horrific price. As his heart finally failed, Komamura lost his human form and his sapience, reverting into a mindless wolf and being carried away from the battlefield by his loyal lieutenant, Iba. The terror continued in the form of Masked Masculine, a Sternritter who drew infinite strength from the fanatical cheers of his companion, James. There he effortlessly brutalized several Soul Reapers and defeated Captains Kensei, Muguruma, and Rose Otoribashi, the latter of whom fell when Mask brutally punctured his own eardrums to escape the illusions of Rose's sound-based Bankai. In the moment of their greatest need, Renji Abarai and Rukia Kuchiki descended from the royal palace, their training complete and their powers vastly enhanced. Renji faced Mask alone, revealing that his Zanpakuto had finally accepted him in his true form. With his complete Bankai, So Zabimaru, Renji incinerated Mask and James with ruthless precision, marking a definitive victory for the Soul Society. The focus then shifted to Rukia, who encountered the terrifying Ace Note. Mastering her Shikai to absolute zero, Rukia rendered his ability to instill fear useless by effectively becoming a dead being, stopping her own life functions to resist his thorns. When A's Note unveiled his monstrous Vollständig, trapping her in a dome of absolute terror, Byakuya Kuchiki arrived to support his sister, encouraging her to finish the fight. Rukia then released her Bankai, Hakka no Togame, a form so cold and lethal that it instantly turned the Sternritter into a shattered statue of ice, a stunning spectacle that proved she had far surpassed her previous limits. The battlefield's logic was soon challenged by the arrival of Gremmy, a Sternritter with the power of the visionary, capable of turning anything he imagined into reality. Thereafter, he seemingly erased the existence of several Soul Reapers and injured Yachiru. Kenpachi Zaraki arrived on the scene with his characteristic ferocity. Gremmy's imagination knew no bounds. He summoned water to drown Kenpachi, missiles to blast him, and finally, a colossal meteor to wipe out the entire Sairete. In response, Kenpachi revealed the name of his Zanpakuto, Nozarashi, and with a single swing of his massive cleaver, he obliterated the meteor, leaving the world in awe of his raw strength. In a final desperate act, Gremmy tried to imagine his own body as strong as Kenpachi's, but his mind could not conceive of such power, causing his body to crumble under the weight of his own vision until he was revealed to be nothing more than a brain in a jar. There the sky itself then became a doorway to a new nightmare. Ichigo Kurosaki finally returned to the Seirete, his descent creating a massive hole in the sky that Yhwach had anticipated. The Quincy king used this breach to bypass the royal palace's defenses, leaving the Sternritters to delay Ichigo. Ichigo easily fended off the Femritters with his new twin-blade power, but his path was blocked by Uryu Ishida. The betrayal was palpable as Uryu, standing cold and resolute beside Yhwach, fired a volley of spiritual arrows at his former friend. While Orihime Inoue and Chad arrived to shield Ichigo, they could only watch as Yhwach, Hashwalth, and Uryu ascended toward the Soul King's palace. While the leaders ascended, the Sternritter, Giselle Gawele, began turning both enemies and allies into mindless zombies, using her blood, even controlling a zombified Captain Hitsugaya. Mayuri Kurotsuchi, however, met this madness with his own summoning resurrected Erincars from his lab to counter the zombie army. Through a series of cruel experiments and mind-altering drugs, Mayuri eventually wrested control of the zombified captains, turning them into his own puppets and defeating Giselle. In the royal palace, the final defense was mounted by the royal guard. Senjumaru Shutara used her weaving needles to trap the initial invaders, but Yhwach summoned his elite guard, the Shutstaffel. Letsu Nimaya, the creator of all Zanpakuto, displayed unmatched skill, using his hyper-sharp blade Sayafushi to cut down the elite guard in what seemed like moments. However, Yhwach revealed the true cruelty of his power by activating Auswählen, a ritual that stripped the life and strength from the Quincy's remaining in the Sairete, including Baz B and the others, to revive and empower his elite guard. Revitalized and more powerful than ever, the elite guard pushed the royal guard to the brink. Recognizing that they could not win in their current state, Nimaya, Kiryo Hikifune, and Tenjiro Kirinji committed the ultimate sacrifice, taking their own lives to break the seal on their collective power. This sacrifice allowed Senjumaru Shutara to unleash her Bankai, Shitatsu Karagara Shigarami no Tsuji, a reality-warping loom that wove a personalized hell for each of her enemies, trapping them in a void dimension of cloth and shadow. At the very summit of the palace, the Battle of the Gods took place between Ichibe'e Hyosube and Yhwach. Ichibe'e, wielding the power of names, used his brush to splash black ink that erased Yhwach's strength and identity. In a final display of dominance, Ichibe'e activated his Bankai Shirafuda Ichimonji, renaming the Quincy King as a frail black ant. With a crushing stomp, Ichibe'e cast the powerless Yhwach from the royal palace, seemingly ending the war.